get started.
Cool. And while she does that, can one of our friends out there let us know quick in the chat that you can hear us and see my PowerPoint? It seems to be working on our end, but just want to make sure y'all are good too. Great. Thank you, Allison. And others. It looks like there's a couple others that chatted too.
Okay, perfect. All right. If you want to get started, we will. Oh, actually, it looks like we have everybody in the room so far.
Okay.
So we will go ahead and get started. So thank you all for joining us for our statewide FAFSA goal session. I'm Rachel Meyer. I'm an outreach coordinator here in the West region, the best region. So again, thank you all for joining us. As a reminder, your microphone and your cameras are already turned off. So please keep them off during our session. If you have questions, please put them into the chat, and we will try to answer them kind of at the end if time permits. Additionally, a copy of all the presentations, every recording of all the sessions are available on the Commission's website. We'll include the link in the chat, and the full education value convening agenda. All the links, breakout sessions are also available. So with that, we will go ahead and get started.
Great. Thanks so much, Rachel. All right, so for those of you who are in the room, I feel like you're in a lucky space because you're going to be the very first ones to hear this information, including Rachel, who I'm so fortunate to have on my team. She hasn't even quite seen all this information yet. We've just finalized it in the last couple of days. So very few people here at the commission even know yet, and there'll be some additional information coming after the holidays. So you're certainly welcome to share this, but you're the first ones to get to see these updates, and I'm excited to share them with you today. Just as a quick introduction again, my name is Michelle Ashcraft. I'm the Associate Commissioner for K-12 Strategy here, which Allison mentioned earlier is a new role here at the Commission. I just started in September, and I know many of you and look forward to hopefully meeting the rest of you as time goes on. So we're going to jump in and get started. I know we have folks, we've tried to engage folks all across the state in many spaces here today. So our educators, our employers, our philanthropy partners, folks from nonprofit and faith-based and community organizations, and of course our fellow folks in various government agencies. So I know not everyone might necessarily be as familiar with the FAFSA as some of us are, so I'm just going to do a quick overview, which will also highlight some of the great resources that we have here at the Commission as well. So I put a little screenshot here from our Learn More site. Allison and Charlie, who some of you may have seen earlier, and their team do a really great job with this site as a front-facing site to support our students, their families, and our educators across the state. And so really the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid. It allows students to apply for federal student financial aid, but also most states and many institutions use it to award their aid as well. So in order for Indiana students to qualify for state financial aid, they do need to have the FAFSA on file. And then for our institutions across the state, they'll use that to award need-based aid and other potential merit scholarships and things as well. This is the actual FAFSA site. And for those of you who work with supporting students or their family members or adults in your life who may be thinking about returning back to school, many of us participate in activities called College Goal Sunday, and we had one of those earlier this fall. And because of what is going on across the country with student loan forgiveness, when people Googled FAFSA, they were landing on the student loan site. So it's important to know that you're on the right page. So if folks want to go and fill out the FAFSA, you see this one here will say complete the FAFSA form, and there's a little button off to the right that says start here. I also like this screenshot because it shows that there is assistance available. We have a lot of assistance across the state to help as well, but there is federal assistance in this little chat bot here. And so at any time, folks can go in and get assistance with filing the form. Currently, the FAFSA does take about 30 minutes to complete. The federal government is going through a FAFSA simplification process that we are eager to see the outcome of, to reduce the number of questions that students and their families have to fill out to complete the FAFSA, as well as to change some of the ways that aid is awarded to make more students eligible for need-based aid. And so those who are familiar with filing the FAFSA, this version for 23-24 will probably look pretty familiar to what you're used to in the past, but we're hoping that by the time we get to 24-25, it will take a little bit less time and won't be as complex to complete. This next screenshot here shows the website that folks will go to create what's called their FSA ID or Federal Student Aid ID. If folks have already created one in the past because they've filed a FAFSA either themselves or for a dependent student, they will just log in here and they can update information. But for anyone who is a first-time filer, they will need to create an FSA ID in order to complete the FAFSA. And if they are a dependent student that needs to have a parent or guardian on the FAFSA, that parent or guardian will need their own FSA ID as well. For those who aren't as familiar with supporting students and their families through this process, it's really important that they utilize an email that they're going to check regularly. One, because information about the FAFSA is going to be sent to that email address, but also in the event that a password is forgotten and we need to reset those FSA IDs, there will either be a notification sent to the email address or the mobile phone that's on file. And so we need folks to be able to get access to those links to be able to reset their passwords. So step one in the process would be to make sure that everyone has an FSA ID set up, and then to go to this previous site here to be able to complete the FAFSA. We, on that Learn More site that I referenced earlier, that is managed here as our forward-facing site, have very detailed steps on how to create that FSA ID that I mentioned and how to complete the FAFSA, and we'll show some additional resources that we have to assist folks as well. So you can see here that you will need a unique username and an email address. One question that I always get when I'm helping with FAFSA filing is, do the dependent student and their parent or guardian have to have separate email addresses? And they do. I have come across many instances where folks may be locked out of an email account, or if you're like my dad, you don't even have an email account. And so sometimes there needs to be some extra assistance up front before we can even get to the point of filing the FAFSA. So not only helping make sure that folks have their FSA ID, but that they have the resources that they need to be able to create that. And one of those resources is an active email address. Those who are in the room, regardless of what space you work in and how you may support Hoosiers across the state, if you are able to assist in making sure that folks have active email addresses, that certainly can help with the FAFSA filing process. There also will be some additional documents that might be needed to file the FAFSA. We have a really great tool now that many folks can use called the IRS Data Retrieval Tool, where as they are going through the filing process, they can link directly to the IRS to pull in most of the financial information that they need directly into the FAFSA now. So those of us who remember filing before that tool existed, you had to have a lot of paperwork to be able to make sure that you could completely file the FAFSA form. Now, most of that information for most students can be pulled over from the IRS data retrieval tool. And then there's just a few things that you might need to pull directly from some tax forms or perhaps from a W-2 statement. And so there on this Learn More website that we have, there's a good list of suggestions of the things that folks might want to have gathered ahead of time before they log in to complete that form. And then the form itself will walk both students and their parents or guardians, if they are dependent, through a series of questions. If you get stuck along the way, there is help with that process in a couple of different ways. The form does allow a little button that you can kind of hover over to get an explanation of what the question is asking for. And then, as I mentioned on a previous slide, there's a really great chat feature where folks can get help as well. This document here, we would be happy to share electronically for those who would find it helpful and haven't seen it before. This is what's referred to as the Model FAFSA Notice. We are actually required by state mandate to provide this to all schools and for schools to provide it to students and their families. It is a 2-page front and back document, and on the left-hand side of the screen there, you can see on the front page has some really great instructions on how folks can file the FAFSA and what they're going to need to be able to do that. A common misperception about filing it is what tax year you need. And so we make sure that this document and our websites are updated every year to direct folks to the correct information. The FAFSA now uses what is called prior year tax information. And so you can see for the upcoming 23-24 FAFSA that they'll be using 2021 tax information. On the backhand side, this is one of my favorite handouts that I give to folks. It has a really great snapshot of all of our state aid opportunities here through the Indiana Commission for Higher Education. I know many folks are familiar with the 21st Century Scholars Program. Some folks might be familiar with the Franco-Bannon grant, and we just recently announced for the 23-24 cycle a very robust increase to the Franco-Bannon grant, about a 35% increase for the base awards for those grants. So we'll be able to support more students in conjunction with the Pell Grant and covering their tuition and fees. We also, for adult students, we have the Adult Student Grant. There's a variety of options for children of veteran and public safety officers, a plethora of options for folks who want to be teachers in the future, even a scholarship for those who graduate high school early. So lots of options, certainly the Workforce Ready Grant that got mentioned earlier. And the great thing about this handout is it gives a brief description, but also has a key that you can see on the far right side there to kind of indicate who might qualify for those opportunities as well. These are important deadlines to know. One of the things that we want to make sure that everyone knows is that the state deadline for filing the FAFSA is April 15th. That is an annual deadline every year. And it is well ahead of the federal deadline. So you can see within the upcoming 23-24 academic year, you can file the FAFSA from a federal perspective almost all the way through the complete academic year, but you do have to file much earlier in order to qualify for state aid. And that will likely be the case for most institutions that students want to enroll in as well. And the institutions may have different deadlines from the state aid deadline as well. So we always want to make sure that students and their families are checking with each institution that they're interested in to know the appropriate deadline that they might want to make sure that they meet to qualify for institutional aid as well. So April 15th, both years and in the foreseeable future for Indiana, June 30th annually for federal, and then check with each institution for their specific deadlines if they are different from the federal or state deadlines. At this exact same time right now, my colleague Josh is presenting our public policy update. And one of the things that he is going to be talking about is our advocacy for a FAFSA requirement. And so since you're in this space with me, I just wanted to give you a little preview of what he is discussing in one of the other rooms around this. And then certainly if you want more information, you can go back and watch his presentation as well. The commission is supportive of a FAFSA requirement for all high school students as a graduation requirement with a broad opt-out provision. And what that means is if passed through the legislative cycle, we would require all high school students to file the FAFSA to graduate or have their parent or guardian or some other designated responsible adult opt them out of having to do that requirement. This has been a bill that has been filed for 4 years and it has made some progress in the past. And so we are going to be pursuing this as an option through this next upcoming legislative session as well. You can see on the screen here that there are many states who already have a requirement like this one. And if you look at any national dashboard regarding FAFSA filing across the country, you wouldn't be surprised to find that many of the states who are listed here are at the top of the list for states in terms of FAFSA completion. So we think that this would be a really strong way to ensure that nobody misses out on an opportunity that might help them make college possible whenever they choose to go. So we'll see how that goes here in the next legislative session. I wanted to spend some time before we get into what our goals are going to be talking about just kind of where we have been in recent years, how we got to today, and what things are looking like so far for this FAFSA filing cycle. So One of the reasons why we are such great proponents of ensuring that as many Hoosiers across the state as possible file the FAFSA is because in addition to robust state financial aid, there's also significant opportunity for students or their families to qualify for federal financial aid as well. And every time that students don't file the FAFSA, they're potentially leaving that money on the table. And so you can see on this screen here, this is related to the 2021 high school graduating class. And just in Indiana alone, you can see that there were more than $65 million unclaimed in Pell Grants that Hoosiers could have potentially qualified for just in that specific graduating class. And that was part of $3.75 billion for that class nationwide in Pell Grants. So certainly we would like for students to be able to take advantage of those federal opportunities that do exist, not only in the Pell Grant, but in the Federal Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant, and for those who might need it to be able to access the federal loan opportunities through the FAFSA as well. And so really we would just want to make sure that they are able to capitalize on those dollars. Additionally, as I said earlier, by filing the FAFSA, they do get access to our state financial aid programs based on their eligibility criteria, and will get access potentially based on eligibility criteria to institutional dollars as well. So for every student who doesn't file the FAFSA, it is much more than this $65 million that we lost out on. There's potentially other dollars across the state and across our institutions that aren't being spent as well. This map here on the right side of the screen is the regional map for the outreach coordinators that are on the K-12 strategy team here at the Commission. Rachel mentioned that she is the outreach coordinator for our West region, which is that light blue area on the left-hand side of the state there. The red area in the upper left-hand corner is our Northwest region. We have the Northeast region there on the right upper right-hand corner. A North Central region. They're just north of Marion County. Marion County stands on its own as our central region. The green area off to the right there is our East region. And then at the lower part of the state, we have our Southwest and Southwest regions. And Rachel is one of 8 folks who live and work across the state in those regions to support a lot of the efforts here at the Commission, including FAFSA filing. You can see on the left-hand side of the screen there that as of April 15th, 2022. This is where our FAFSA filing rates were for the 22-23 FAFSA. So across the state as a whole, we had a 44% filing rate for the high school graduating class. Now, I want to specify that the presentation that we're talking about here today specifically pertains to high school seniors. But we as a commission are also very interested in making sure that those who have already enrolled in post-secondary education continue to file their FAFSA. And I have some data coming up on future slides about what we call renewals, which are those who have already started college and just need to continue to file. And then, as presentations throughout the day are going to share today, we have approximately 2 million adults across the state who could potentially benefit from opportunities to go back and get a credential or of some type. And we certainly need to work on FAFSA filing rates for those adult students as well. So these percentages on the screen here are specifically pertaining to the high school graduating class of 2022. And you can see kind of where the regions compare to that overall Indiana average. I mentioned that this was as of April 15th, which is our state filing date. We do have a FAFSA dashboard that we monitor weekly. And as of July 31st, which would have been really kind of the last deadline that we wanted folks to file the FAFSA in order to make sure that they could have their aid in order for this current semester, we were at approximately 46%. So over the summer, we just bumped up a couple of percentage points, and we really would like not only to see the FAFSA filing across the high school senior class grow, but that we make sure that if they are going to file, that they file by that April 15th deadline. So this just gets at kind of where we have been in the last couple of years. I have a couple of slides here that will show some historical data, and then an additional slide that will show kind of where we are today. Obviously, one of the biggest barriers that we've had in recent years is the pandemic, and it has influenced folks pursuing post-secondary education in a variety of ways. And one of the ways that it has most significantly impacted higher education is that FAFSA filing has declined. And not has it just declined for our state, but it has also declined nationally. And it has specifically declined for certain demographics of students that we would want to make sure are capitalizing on the opportunity to access our federal and state aid dollars, as well as our institutional aid dollars. That would include Black and Latinx students. That would include students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. It would also include first-generation students and adult students, especially adult students who are working and may be caring for children or other adults. And so while the information that you see on the screen here is an aggregate specifically for the high school senior cohorts, there's certainly a lot of other rates that we need to look at and monitor to make sure that we're doing as best as we can across the state with our FAFSA filing. So here you will see in fall 2019, as of this time last year, where we were with FAFSA filing. The FAFSA does open on October 1st, so students and their families can start filing early, and then you'll see in the middle column there where we stand as of today. So compared to fall 2019 before the pandemic hit in spring 2020, you can see that we're down overall about 20 percentage points in this time compared to that time back in 2019. For high school seniors, it's not as steep of a decline. We're down just about 12%. But for renewals, which is concerning, we're down almost a quarter. And these are folks who would have already started their post-secondary education in some capacity that then didn't renew filing their FAFSA or haven't done so yet. So certainly different things for us to watch moving forward. Looking at our current data for where we are at filing this year compared to this time last year, however, you can see that we're making some progress. And so this is part of the reason why we wanted to launch this discussion today. We have many great partners across the state who are helping with messaging and with filing. And compared to this exact time last year, you see that we're up 10% overall, which is some really great early news. For our high school seniors in this 2023 cohort, we're up 3%. And then for renewals, for those who have already started their post-secondary education or on their pathway to graduation, we're up 15%. So some great progress that many of you in the room today are already helping us with, and we certainly want to continue to capitalize on that progress as we move forward towards our April 15th deadline. Just to show national landscape, you can see the bar that is different colored there, that is red on the screen compared to the blue bars there, or that is shaded differently, is where Indiana lies. And currently, as of just around Thanksgiving time, we ranked 34th out of 51 states, if you include District of Columbia, in our current FAFSA filing rates for the 23-24 FAFSA. And again, this is specifically for the 2023 graduating class. If you're interested in playing around with this dashboard and many others that are similar to this one to see how Indiana compares to national data, you can see the link at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen will take you to where sort of the national dashboards on this data are located. So next I want to transition into why FAFSA is so important here in Indiana. You heard Allison and Charlie share earlier that some of the biggest feedback that we got out of the research that they have done is this notion that college is too expensive. But we as a state sit in a really great position to support Hoosiers across the state in making college more accessible and manageable and attainable through our robust state financial aid programs. You can see there we have about $390 million in state financial aid. That was assessed before the recent Franco-Bannon increase that we announced. And you can see that that qualifies us as the first in the Midwest and fifth in the state, as Chris shared earlier, both in his presentation and in the chat. So we have robust ways, as I showed on the handout earlier, through a variety of scholarship and grant programs that we can support students in being able to pursue some sort of post-secondary pathway. All right, so what most of you are probably here for is the announcement of our statewide FAFSA goal. So that is what we are going to talk about next. So you will see on the right-hand side of the screen, fresh, brand new for you all today with more information to come, what we would like to pursue for this current class of 2023 that's going to graduate in the spring. is that we would like to see our state get to a 60% FAFSA filing rate for the high school senior class. Again, this is for the 23-24 FAFSA that is active right now. It opened October 1st, and again, for the state is due on April 15th. And we think that we can get there with your support and support of others who are participating in the convening today and many other Hoosiers across the state. We have had high FAFSA filing rates before, and we certainly have seen the very explainable dip in pandemic, but we are eager to get back to the higher FAFSA filing rates and college going rates that we had before the pandemic, and even before we got to the pandemic, before we started to see that college going decline. Part of the reason why we want to track towards that 60% goal is you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, and this will be shared all throughout the day today. That top chart shows that we have been pursuing a 60% goal, where we hoped that by 2025, we would have 60% of Hoosiers who had earned some sort of credential beyond high school. Chris did share this morning that we are not going to necessarily meet that goal in 2025, but that does not mean that the commission is stopping on trying to pursue achieving that goal. And working with all of you and many other partners to make sure that we can get there. We have made significant progress on that goal. You can see when it was announced in 2008 where we were compared to 2021. And one of the ways that we think that we can help achieve that goal is by ensuring that as many people as possible file the FAFSA and get access to financial aid. What we are also announcing today and will continue to share information about is looking ahead to 2024. We would like to raise that FAFSA filing goal again for the high school senior class to 65%. So that would be the 24-25 FAFSA. The really great thing about 24-25 is we do expect that FAFSA simplification is coming. We don't know the full details about what that's going to look like just yet, but we're hoping that with not taking so long to file, not having to provide as much information, having a more simplified form with less questions on it, that it will make it even easier for students and their families to be able to file the FAFSA. Again, part of the reason why we want to track towards that 65% goal is because you can see well before the pandemic, we did have a college going rate straight out of high school of 65%. And we have kind of steadily declined since then until we got to the point where we are today at a 53% college going rate. And so really we are in pursuit of getting back to that 65% mark and then hopefully being able to even elevate that college going rate further once we re-achieve that goal. So some next steps of things that you can look forward to. In January 2023, we have our commission meeting that we will have every other month next year. And so we will also make this same announcement at that commission meeting. And shortly afterwards, there will be a press release that goes out that will share several things. One, it will share both the goals for the class of 2023 and the class of 2024. I also mentioned earlier that we have a state-specific dashboard that we update weekly that gives some heat maps where folks can kind of see how their counties are performing. And then when you toggle over to another screen, it allows you to look at individual schools and school districts to see how they're performing. And so anyone, it's a public dashboard, will be able to access that information to see the progress that we are making. And then we will also communicate some of the available supports that we have across the state to be able to help all of you in your local communities and in your schools and on your campuses and in your businesses and organizations to be able to support us in achieving this goal. We will also, through our outreach coordinators, again, I mentioned Rachel is one of those, will be communicating with them not only our statewide goals, but how does that break down into region, county, and school-based goals? Certainly, as you can imagine, across the state, that counties and schools and school districts file at very different rates. And so we will be working individually with those outreach coordinators about setting some more local metrics around FAFSA filing that then they can reach out to with their partners in their regions to help us achieve those. I mentioned earlier that we had a College Goals Sunday event in the fall, earlier this fall, which is where all across the state, many of us and many of you show up to help families file the FAFSA, and we will have another one of those in the spring semester on February 26th. And there'll be information that will be coming out where if you would like to, you can come and volunteer to help folks file. Or if you are interested in filing the FAFSA yourself, you can show up and get assistance on that day. Then as we look towards summer 2023, we hope to do some celebration and recognition of our educator partners, both at the high school level and at the post-secondary level, for helping us reach these goals. There will also be some things coming out in the spring around FAFSA filing for adults and renewals. As I mentioned, this presentation is specific to the high school graduating class, but we are looking at what we can do to help post-secondary students continue to renew their financial aid through repeated filing of the FAFSA, and how we can get more adults to file as well. So we want to celebrate all the progress around that. Summer is a great time where many of us and many of you will be helping students address any FAFSA edits or verification that they have to complete. Certainly state financial aid awarding will happen in July, as it always has. And then we also have another great initiative that's going to be coming forward that Josh is also talking about in his concurrent session right now as well. And that is that we in the fall semester will be launching a new pre-admission initiative. I don't want to take too much time on that right now, and you can certainly go and view Josh's presentation after the convening is over, but we are inviting our public institutions across the state to join us in a new pre-admission initiative, where essentially we would work with them on minimum eligibility criteria that students would need to meet to qualify to go to their institution. And in early September, the class of 2024, every single high school senior across the state would receive a letter that lets them know they have been pre-admitted to the following institutions based on what they qualify for. And on the backside of that letter, we'll be able to tell them what their next steps would be, one of which would be ensuring that as soon as the FAFSA opens on October 1st, that they file that so that they can qualify for as much financial aid to be able to go to one of those institutions that they have been pre-admitted to. I've mentioned we're also preparing for what FAFSA simplification is going to look like, and we'll certainly need to update our state financial aid system to accommodate for that. And then we'll continue, as I said, to set those regional, county, and school-specific metrics so that our outreach coordinators and their partners can support the schools in helping us with these goals. Looking towards fall, financial aid would be released for students as they enroll into their post-secondary institutions. Again, we'll continue to follow up on those metrics. We'll launch this pre-admission initiative. There's a week every year called College Go Week, where we try to get the word out as much as possible about applying early to post-secondary options. And so we are intentionally planning to release those pre-admission letters ahead of College Go Week so that we can promote that and use College Go Week to then promote making sure that you file the FAFSA come October when it opens as well. And College Goal Sundays will continue to repeat too. So then this is my last slide, and then Rachel will help me facilitate questions. I invite Allison to hop in if she needs to as well. She is helping us. So these are some things that is just a brief list, certainly not extensive, of some things that everyone in the room can be thinking about. Chris has mentioned in many spaces our partnership Pentagon, so you can see around here, we as a commission are really interested in linking arms with our philanthropy, government, community, and employer partners, in addition to our educators across the state at the K-12 and post-secondary levels around all of the work that we're doing, and that includes FAFSA filing. So just some things that you can consider. Rachel and her excellent colleagues across the state who serve as our outreach coordinators, they are regularly partnering with schools and with organizations, specifically InvestEd, around the state to host FAFSA filing events, even outside of those College Goal Sunday events. And so we would love to engage as many of you who want to be involved in those events to help or to get the word out or to bring folks to those events, to even sponsor them perhaps. Rachel will be the first to tell you that if we can provide food at things, people will come. And so I think she would ask for consideration of support in that capacity, as well as others. As Allison and Charlie shared earlier, many of you are considered trusted messengers to our Hoosiers across the state. And so things that you can do as a trusted messenger is asking folks if they have an FSA ID set up, and if not, making sure that they have an email address that they could access and helping them get that set up. Certainly promoting FAFSA filing in communications. Regardless of what type of organization that you're in, as you are reaching out to students and families or your employees and their families, how can you communicate about the FAFSA? encouraging both students and their parents and guardians to file. A lot of parents and guardians may not realize that there are robust opportunities to support them in going back to school as well. And then making several referrals to the Learn More site that I referenced earlier, to the commission and our invested partners, and to our great institutional financial aid offices who can provide help as well. And then reminding that folks that sometimes filing the FAFSA is not the only step. Some folks will certainly have to do edits and complete verification. We have many great, wonderful partners across the state who are already helping us with providing incentives of all kinds for creating FSA IDs and promoting early FAFSA filing. So if you'd be interested in contributing that in any way, we would love to connect with you. Sharing the FAFSA notice that I shared earlier, and especially that list of scholarship opportunities on the backside, will certainly help as well. So just again, a quick snapshot of opportunities. There's certainly more that we could discuss and more that will come out in the spring. But with that, I will toss it over to Rachel to help facilitate any questions that we have here as we wrap up this session.
Okay, we did have a question come in.
Okay.
Pat asked, would opening the Workforce Ready Grant program to dependent students enrolled half-time make a difference in the FAFSA filing? Some traditional age students are not ready for full-time college enrollment.
Yep. Pat, I appreciate that question. And I don't know if you were the one who asked it earlier. We saw a similar question in the chat earlier. I do not specifically know all of the requirements around that specific grant off the top of my head to be able to answer specifically, but we do have people who are pulling that information up to be able to respond in both chats regarding that question. I do know that there are some options for our K through 12 students and those who graduate to utilize the Workforce Ready grant. And so we communicate the exact correct information. The questions around that will be responded to in the chat. There should be a link and a handout that's coming that can address that, as well as some content to specifically address your question about the dependent status.
Yeah, and we can always share that with our policy team.
Yes.
If there's anything around a specific scholarship or grant that we have at the state that you would like to see changed, definitely reach out to your outreach coordinator or someone in our central office, and then we can start having those conversations with legislators to like, how can we best serve our students that we work with?
Yeah, and Allison shared in her presentation earlier, so the same day that I came on board, Stacy Townsley, our Associate Commissioner for Adult Strategy, came on board. And so she is going to be working very collaboratively with our policy team, who happens to oversee our state financial aid programs. Regarding the Workforce Ready grant, they're doing a pretty big audit of that program right now. And so she had seen the similar question earlier. So she's already got that on her radar to follow up on. And will certainly be helping answer questions. I can tell you that one of the things that Stacy shares from prior roles is we do, speaking of Workforce Ready grant, but also other things, is we have had so many adults across the state who choose to go back to post-secondary education and they don't file the FAFSA as part of that step. We certainly have a lot of adults across the state that we want to re-engage in some sort of post-secondary opportunity, but we also have a very high percentage of adults who are engaging in those opportunities and just not filing the FAFSA. So that goes back to some of those renewal numbers that we were sharing earlier. And so what Stacy is also going to be working on that will launch in the spring is an outreach campaign to reach out to a few populations of students. My team and Allison's team will be helping with this as well. So looking at 21st century scholars who have stopped out and how can we re-enroll them, looking at adults who were enrolled and have stopped out and how can we re-engage them, and then looking at those who maybe haven't taken that first step to engage in post-secondary education and how can we help them make sure that they get the FAFSA filed and get support through the enrollment process. Anything else I can answer for you, Rachel?
It looks like that was our only outstanding question because we got the FAFSA flyers in English and Spanish posted.
Great.
Yeah, so if anyone else has questions, we have about 4 minutes left in our session, and then we will have another little break before our next sessions.
Great. So as we see if any pop up here at the last minute, a couple things. I'm sure you all are sharing some resources. You mentioned the handout in English and Spanish. We will also drop the Learn More site in there. There is also on the Commission's website a really detailed page regarding all of our state aid programs, and so we can drop that in the link or in the chat as well, including the great update about the expansion of the Frank O'Bannon Awards. And some other resources that we can do there as well. What I provided earlier, if you were in the keynotes that we can provide here as well, is a link on our Learn More website where you can actually see all of the photos and contact information for our outreach coordinators and that map that I showed earlier with their names attached. So you know, if you're in the West region, Rachel is yours, but if you're not in the West region, you can see who your outreach coordinator is. So that way you can contact them directly. We also have a program here at the Commission called Scholar Corps, and we have AmeriCorps members on many of our institutions across the state on their campuses that are supporting 21st century scholars. And so they do a lot of work around FAFSA filing and would be good contacts if you want to get in touch with them as well, in addition to our state, our institution's financial aid offices. So there's no shortage of help for sure. And if you sit in one of these other spaces, either at a specific K-12 school or district on a post-secondary campus, if you work in philanthropy or some other government agency, or you're in a community organization, if you're an employer and you're not partnering with us and you're interested in this work, we would love to hear from you. And so I will click here. I have my email address here on the screen. If you're not quite sure who to reach out first, certainly send me an email and I'll get you connected with the appropriate partners who can help get you involved. We still good, Rachel? Perfect. All right. Well, with that, I guess we will wrap up. We'll continue to monitor the chat throughout the day. So if you have questions, again, email me or post something and we will get to you. We will have a break for lunch, and then you will be able to go back to the website to find the link to the next set of breakout sessions so that you can see what you would like to participate in next. And then we will wrap up the day with a panel for everyone to participate in, and you'll find the link for that on the website as well. This PowerPoint is on the website, and as we mentioned,